It's the artist's dinner. This is Monday. Here she is. Let's watch it. She's all smiles. She's clearly in a great mood. I mean, she's acting like she won the case in chief against him. She didn't. And nor did the judge find that Justin's allegations are untrue.
It began as a lawsuit that sent ripples, no shockwaves, through the entertainment industry. A $400 million defamation and extortion claim that threatened to redefine how Hollywood handles internal disputes. The plaintiff, Justin Baldoni, who rose to prominence playing the idealistic Raphael Solano in Jane the Virgin, and had since been positioning himself as a media entrepreneur and thought leader, took a bold and aggressive legal swing. In his sprawling complaint, filed in the Southern District of New York, Baldoni accused acclaimed actress Blake Lively of orchestrating what he described as a calculated, behind-the-scenes operation designed not merely to challenge creative decisions, but to annihilate his personal and professional reputation. According to the court filing, spanning over 90 pages,
the judge just said basically you can't sue her for allegations she makes in a complaint she filed with the Civil Rights Department. Can't sue her for defamation for that. It's covered by a privilege.
He alleged that Lively, dissatisfied with production standards and safety concerns on a project in which both were attached, engaged in a campaign that included internal ultimatums, third-party pressure, and withheld promotional cooperation, all intended to publicly undermine him unless her demands were met. Baldoni's legal team painted a dramatic portrait, an embattled producer targeted by a high-profile co-star who, they claimed, leveraged her influence and media platform to intimidate and manipulate outcomes. The suit categorized her conduct as malicious interference, and more drastically, as tortious extortion under New York law, a rare and precarious allegation in entertainment litigation. The stakes were enormous. Had it succeeded.
But then all of that bringing us to yesterday, where you had a judge tossing out his complaints, ruling that the allegations that Blake made in her suit are exempt from libel claims, and that Justin's assertions that Blake stole creative control of the movie, they don't count as extortion. With the judge writing that the complaint did not adequately state that Blake's, quote, threats were wrongful extortion rather than legally permissible hard bargaining or renegotiation of working conditions.
The case could have opened the floodgates for studio executives, producers, or even creative leads to sue dissenting collaborators for speaking up, effectively criminalizing creative tension. It was a potential legal precedent with far-reaching implications, not only for actors but for writers, directors, and production teams across the industry. But what unfolded inside the courtroom was a masterclass in legal precision. U.S. District Judge Lewis Liman, a seasoned jurist known for his sharp grasp of constitutional law and an unflinching eye for legal overreach, dissected the case with surgical clarity. His opinion, delivered in an 18-page ruling, dismantled Baldoni's claims point by point.
Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively has been dismissed by a judge in New York. The pair, who both starred in the film It Ends With Us, have been locked in a legal battle for several months, with the trial set for next year. But on Monday, Judge Lewis Liman dismissed Baldoni's countersuit, which alleged extortion, defamation, and other allegations.
Liman found that Lively's refusal to participate in promotional duties was not coercion. It was a legitimate exercise of contractual discretion. Her concerns, which she had raised through formal and documented communication, were squarely within her rights as a contracted party. The judge emphasized that the communications cited as threats were, in fact, protected negotiations, communications that fall under well-established labor and First Amendment protections. Even more damning was Liman's critique of the lawsuit's broader implications.
Right in December, you had Blake filing a civil complaint and then eventually a lawsuit where she claimed she was then retaliated against during production. Then in January, you had Justin and his production company filing his lawsuit where he accused Blake, Ryan, and their publicist of trying to destroy his career and take over control of the film. And then actually, he also sued the New York Times, which was the first outlet to report on Blake's allegation.
He noted that allowing such a case to move forward would effectively punish individuals for raising concerns in professional settings, a dangerous erosion of both contractual rights and speech protections. His opinion stated plainly that expressing dissatisfaction or seeking redress within a professional context does not rise to the level of defamation or extortion, and he cautioned against the growing trend of leveraging massive lawsuits to silence dissent. In that moment, the courtroom didn't just hear a verdict, it witnessed a repudiation of an attempt to redefine artistic disagreement as a legal offense.
We gotta talk about this Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively situation, because we just got a huge update. Because Baldoni, he just took a huge L in his legal battle against Lively, but understand, the case is still far from over. Because yesterday, you had a judge dismissing the $400 million lawsuit that Justin had filed against Blake, where he accused her and her husband Ryan Reynolds of defamation and extortion. Which, to give you just enough background for those that haven't lived and breathed this story, with Blake and Justin starred in the film It Ends With Us, which Justin also directed, with the two not walking off that set as friends, to say the least.
What was intended as a show of dominance became, instead, a landmark warning against abusing the judicial system to enforce silence. Judge Liman's opinion, meticulously crafted and filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, stands as a sweeping and unambiguous repudiation of the legal claims asserted by Baldoni against Lively. The opinion does not merely dismiss the accusations, it dismantles them piece by piece with surgical legal precision. Baldoni had alleged that Lively engaged in conduct amounting to defamation and extortion by purportedly refusing to fulfill certain promotional obligations unless production-related grievances were addressed.
If this, it's clear, the evidence is clear that they, secreted to get the information on this Van Zam subpoena and created, this whole Doe lawsuit and got that information so that no one could see it.
However, Judge Liman made it abundantly clear that such allegations, even if taken at face value, failed to meet the stringent legal criteria required to sustain claims of defamation or extortion under both statutory and case law. In the opinion, Judge Liman highlighted a crucial distinction between aggressive or strategic workplace communication and genuinely unlawful behavior. He noted that Lively's conduct, specifically, her expressed dissatisfaction with aspects of the production process and her conditional participation in promotional activities, was not only within her contractual authority, but also fell under the broad protections afforded by labor and contract law.
How did Justin take the news, Brian? It's having practiced law. I know it's never great when you get a decision like this one. How's he feeling?
I think that injustice is a word I think I can best describe it. A lack of understanding. If she said these things about me that were untrue, how come I don't have a legal redress in terms of defamation?
The judge stressed that individuals engaged in professional environments have the right to raise concerns, negotiate terms, and even condition aspects of their performance upon the resolution of legitimate disputes. These acts, far from being coercive or defamatory, constitute core elements of workplace dialogue and bargaining, particularly in high-stakes industries such as entertainment, where contractual performance often hinges on nuanced and evolving logistical factors. Judge Liman's language was particularly direct and instructive in this regard. He wrote that expressing dissatisfaction with working conditions, or even conditioning participation in promotional efforts upon remedial action, is not only lawful, it is protected. This assertion carries significant legal and philosophical weight. It means that Lively's behavior, questioning production delays, requesting changes, or tying her participation in marketing events to the resolution of these issues, could not be interpreted as an unlawful threat or an attempt to defame anyone involved. Rather, it was precisely the kind of action the law encourages, self-advocacy within the bounds of a contractual relationship. Furthermore, the opinion served a broader legal purpose: to safeguard the right of professionals to voice concerns without fear of retaliatory litigation. Judge Liman appeared acutely aware of the potential consequences if Baldoni's claims were allowed to proceed. If courts began to entertain lawsuits based on employees or contractors raising objections or setting conditions for their continued participation in a project, it would open the floodgates for opportunistic claims aimed at silencing legitimate dissent. In stark, black-letter legal terms, Liman's ruling shut that door decisively. He affirmed that the courtroom is not a venue for punishing negotiation or protest conducted within the legal scope of a contract. The opinion also implicitly recognized the power dynamics often at play in professional environments, especially in industries like film and media, where reputational leverage and public relations are frequently used to pressure individuals into compliance. By ruling in Lively's favor, Judge Liman issued a judicial reminder that legal systems must protect not just contractual obligations, but the rights of individuals to navigate those contracts with agency, assertiveness, and legal shelter from bad faith accusations. In totality, the opinion is a robust defense of professional integrity and legal proportionality. It affirms the principle that speaking up, even in contentious circumstances, is not only a right but an essential component of fair professional engagement. The ruling may well serve as a guiding precedent for future disputes in the entertainment industry and beyond, where legal systems must distinguish between coercion and contractually protected communication. Beneath the surface of red carpet appearances, glossy promotional campaigns, and carefully edited movie trailers, the conflict that unfolded in this case was far more than a mere disagreement over contractual obligations. It was, at its core, a deeply entrenched power struggle. What emerged from the court filings was a narrative of an actor, Blake Lively, who repeatedly raised serious, substantive concerns about the production environment. These concerns were not trivial, vague, or casually mentioned in passing. Rather, they were formally documented, detailed, and conveyed through the appropriate professional and legal channels. Lively, according to court documents, expressed that certain on-set practices and production decisions not only disrupted the creative vision of the project, but also posed safety risks to cast and crew. These were not idle complaints. They reflected a growing frustration with what she perceived as a pattern of negligence and mismanagement that was incompatible with professional standards and personal ethics. Lively's efforts to address these concerns followed a measured and methodical path. Instead of resorting to public outbursts or unauthorized leaks, she pursued resolution internally, using legal counsel to submit formal memos and documented communications outlining specific grievances. These included instances where safety protocols were allegedly ignored, creative boundaries were overstepped, and key contractual understandings were skirted or dismissed by the production team. Her intent, as evidenced by the record, was not to disrupt the project, but to ensure that it adhered to the standards expected in a professional, safe, and creatively respectful environment. However, when these concerns were met with indifference, or worse, with active resistance, Lively exercised one of the few forms of leverage available to her under the terms of her contract. She declined to participate in promotional appearances and media engagements tied to the film's release. Judge Liman, in reviewing the legal and factual dimensions of the case, found this decision to be not only within her rights, but a protected action under both labor law and contractual interpretation. He emphasized that Lively's refusal was not an act of sabotage or breach, but a legitimate form of protest against unresolved workplace grievances. This was a critical distinction. The court made clear that in industries where public image is currency and promotional appearances are often contractually expected, individuals still retain the right to withhold participation when fundamental concerns are ignored. Liman's ruling referenced precedent, most notably New York Times Company v. Sullivan, to illustrate that constitutional protections, particularly those related to free expression and protest, do not evaporate in commercial settings like film sets or media tours. In fact, his inclusion of this landmark First Amendment case signaled a broader warning against the suppression of speech through corporate or contractual pressure. By grounding his opinion in both employment law and constitutional jurisprudence, Judge Liman sent a powerful message: workers, regardless of their public profile or industry, cannot be compelled into silence or forced participation when doing so would compromise their integrity, safety, or legal rights. In this case, what might have been portrayed publicly as a simple breach of promotional duties was, in the court's view, a justifiable and legally protected act of resistance, one rooted in a sincere effort to uphold ethical standards and ensure accountability in an industry often driven by image over substance. Lively's legal victory was not the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of a carefully orchestrated and deeply symbolic postscript. While many in her position might have launched a full-scale media tour, granting interviews and issuing carefully scripted statements, Lively chose a different path, one marked by restraint, precision, and quiet resolve. She did not make the rounds on talk shows, offer a sit-down with a glossy magazine, or even issue a formal press release. Instead, she let her actions, subtle as they were, deliver the message. On social media, without fanfare or caption, she began liking a series of posts from industry insiders, advocacy groups, and fellow artists that praised transparency in film production, the importance of ethical leadership among producers, and the rights of talent to demand accountability without fear of retaliation. These were not generic or feel-good messages. They were thematically pointed, implicitly tied to her case, and spoke to the very issues that had been contested in court. This digital activity, though outwardly minimal, carried enormous symbolic weight. In an industry where silence is often contractually mandated, thanks to the widespread use of non-disparagement clauses that muzzle critique and sanitize public discourse, Lively's actions were bold. By simply aligning herself with public commentary that underscored the need for reform and integrity behind the scenes, she reclaimed the narrative on her own terms. Her refusal to engage in traditional post-trial victory laps was not a sign of detachment, it was a calculated and deliberate strategy to assert power without performance. In a space where publicists often sanitize celebrity messaging until it's stripped of any real conviction, Lively's likes became a kind of curated resistance, an act of digital authorship that required no press junket, no tweet, no caption. The likes themselves told the story. She stood by her actions, the court stood with her, and she wasn't going to apologize for holding her ground. More importantly, her silence wasn't void. It was full of meaning. In choosing not to speak directly, Lively avoided the risk of seeming self-congratulatory or antagonistic. Yet the clarity of her position could not be mistaken. The online trail she left behind offered a subtle, yet undeniable assertion of victory, not just in a legal sense but in a moral and cultural one. It was an embodiment of quiet defiance in an industry that often rewards compliance and punishes candor. She didn't need to say, "I was right." The court said it for her. Her digital presence simply underlined it with poise and finality. The deeper significance of the case extended far beyond the individual conflict between Blake Lively and her legal adversary. It pierced directly into the heart of Hollywood's long-standing and often unchallenged power dynamics. For generations, the entertainment industry has operated under a shadow regime of unspoken rules, where silence was not just encouraged, it was expected, even demanded. To speak out against unsafe conditions, unethical behavior, or breaches of creative and contractual standards was to risk career suicide. In this world, reputations are as fragile as they are essential, and anyone branded as difficult could quickly find themselves blacklisted, ostracized, or quietly passed over for future roles. This fear-induced culture created a chilling effect, where grievances were whispered behind closed doors, if acknowledged at all, and legal retaliation loomed large as a weapon of intimidation. Lively's case obliterated that paradigm in a very public and judicially sanctioned way. By not only surviving, but decisively winning one of the most aggressively priced and reputationally loaded lawsuits in recent Hollywood memory, she dealt a severe blow to the mechanisms of enforced silence. Her victory was not just a personal triumph, it became a flashpoint moment for the industry at large, challenging the long-accepted norm that those who speak out should expect to suffer. The courtroom became a stage where the script was finally flipped. Instead of punishing dissent, the legal system, through Judge Liman's ruling, upheld it as lawful, reasonable, and protected. In the aftermath of the verdict, legal scholars and industry observers recognized the broader implications. Professor Rachel Marston of USC Gould School of Law, in widely circulated post-trial commentary, articulated what many were thinking but few had dared to say out loud. The case had shifted the legal and cultural playing field. Her statement that the ruling sends a message to other industry players, defamation law isn't your private weapon to chill speech you find inconvenient, crystallized the judgment's symbolic weight. No longer could powerful producers or studio executives casually weaponize lawsuits as a means of silencing performers, especially when those performers raised concerns rooted in professional integrity, safety, or creative protection. What Lively's case exposed was not just the illegitimacy of the specific claims made against her, but the larger legal cynicism that often underlies such lawsuits. It laid bare the practice of using defamation as a form of reputational coercion, a way to scare others into silence by making a public example of one dissenting voice. Her successful defense proved that this strategy could backfire, and that the courts, when asked to examine these disputes through a lens of constitutional and contractual rights, would not automatically side with those holding financial or institutional power. In shattering the long-standing expectation that actors must endure injustice quietly or risk annihilation, Lively made space for others to follow. Her win carved out a new precedent, not just in legal terms, but in the cultural consciousness of Hollywood. It was a powerful signal that speaking up doesn't have to mean disappearing, that legal threats can be challenged, that integrity can survive and even triumph in the face of orchestrated suppression. The ripple effects of that victory will be felt not just in legal briefs and academic commentary, but in the quiet, personal decisions of future actors, writers, and crew members who, empowered by her example, may now choose to speak.